if you read the Declaration of Independence that was signed on Shiva B'Tammuz, 1776, which fell incidentally on the 4th of July of that year, you will see that they had big timeless. They were very, very bothered by the things that the King of England was doing to the states. And they basically said, we tried everything that we could. We tried what we could to make shalom and to be nice and to try to work it out. And we didn't have a partner on the other side. And so we are declaring our independence. Everything that they wrote there is certainly things that one would concern themselves with. Included in there are even claims that would turn the British to royal into Rhodefin, that they were actually randomly killing people, and the soldiers were not even being held accountable for deaths that they caused in the states. At the beginning, it's actually the second paragraph. They open with words that are known by many people, and those words are, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." They go on to say that all men are created equal. In other words, there's no such concept as a superior being, namely the king, even though they themselves were mostly slave owners. So apparently, men being created equal was not exactly equal. It was equal in a manner of speaking. But they said this sentence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. And perhaps it wasn't seen at the time. But what they did was they gave official sanction to the idea that a person is entitled to have an opinion. And it's an opinion that, well, these truths are self-evident. And that idea, as much as it seems intuitively obvious, isn't everybody entitled to their opinion, eventually became the undoing of America. Because every opinion became relevant and even protected. And if a person had an opinion or has an opinion, it doesn't matter how outrageous the opinion is, it must be given credibility, because that is the nature of, once you start with an opinion, then everybody is entitled to an opinion. And if I identify as a woman or as a Cobra or as a B-52 bomber, if that's my opinion, then I am entitled to that opinion, and it is a protected right to have an opinion. Now, I want to contrast that for a moment with what we have from a Torah perspective. From a Torah perspective, the highest accolade, the highest praise that we can give, perhaps even to a Rishon, and by the way, these founding fathers were living at the same time as the Nodi B'Yehuda. Tshuvas are being written by the Nodi B'Yehuda at the same time that the founding fathers are saying this. The highest praise is the relationship that we have with the lin nireh of a Talmid Chacham. That lin nireh, that means that we can approach them, we can ask them, they can respond to things that are not necessarily specifically sourced in a particular chazal, because their essence was chazal. And the way that Klal Yisrael gave that right and that distinguished position of taking the lin nireh seriously is because of the basic approach called I might be wrong. People who were willing for years, day in and day out, to subject everything that they said and thought to the opposition, to the possibility that they are wrong, and that they need to align everything that they say with every aspect of Torah, including when those other aspects of Torah do not align with their own view. And to do that day in and day out. There's a famous story, I have no idea if it's true, you may have heard it from me before. It's a famous story that about the author of the Ktsos, is also the author of the Shemaitza. So when the Ktsos came out, it was a lahit. It was flying off the shelf. The yeshiva world embraced the Ktsos literally from day one. And there was a Talmid Chacham who approached the Ktsos and said to him, like, you and I both know that I'm at least as big a Talmid Chacham as you are. I mean, between you and me, we know. And yet your sefer is flying off the shelves, and it has a wonderful reception in the Olam HaTorah, and my sefer is not getting that kind of reception. Why do you think that is, given that I'm at least as big a Talmid Chacham as you are? So Ktsos asked him for his writing schedule. And he said, I write most of the day, and when I'm able to, I write most of the night. So the Ktsos said to me, that's the difference. He said, I write most of the day, and I erase most of the night. That story, I don't know whether it ever happened. Not my department. Like Rabbi Wein used to say, all my stories are true, not all of them have happened. But the idea that somebody could day in and day out write what they were absolutely certain was true, and then to review and to discover that perhaps what they're saying is not true, even though they were convinced that it was true at the time, that is what gives the power of the lin nireh. It is to those words and to those people who subjected themselves to that for years that we grant this remarkable capacity called lin nireh, which I refer to as you can have an opinion. Everyone else is subject to the idea of lemad lashon chalomar eini yodea. I don't know. I don't have the credentials to be able to have an opinion. What the Declaration of Independence did is it placed the idea of having an opinion in a place where it was never meant to be. And it gave the sense that everyone can have an opinion. It's remarkable. Everybody can vote. I often refer to the fact that I was once looking on Amazon for a particular item, and I found the item that I was looking for, but I was wondering, since it was an electrical item, whether the transformer was 110, 220. Now, in Amazon, people ask questions, and those who own the product respond to those questions or are asked to respond to those questions. And so somebody's looking for the product can find out about it. And sure enough, somebody had asked my question. Somebody had asked, is it suitable for 110, 220? And the answer was given. The answer was, I don't know. I didn't open the box yet. I'm not kidding. This was an actual response. Now, imagine that a person like that walks around unescorted. They actually can walk around in the street and nobody is afraid. They even are given the right to vote. Can you imagine a person like that is given the right to choose the next president? It's shocking. But that's how far it's gone. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, even somebody who is absolutely classified as a moron. And it doesn't matter that the person's opinion is based on nothing, or it's based on very real grievances, very real concerns. Certainly what they list in the Declaration of Independence are some very serious concerns. But the idea of mehechetesi, what gives the right to have an opinion? Now, they were people, thinking people, they were not simple people, and I don't think that they intentionally unleashed the tyranny of the masses that subsequently grew out of that sentence. I don't think that they intended that. But it was an unintended byproduct. And it's one that causes untold damage in the world, where instead of abiding by the dictum of Chazal, I don't know, Lemad Lashon Cholomer Ein Yodei. I'm not required to have an opinion. You speak to Gedolim, as I have had the privilege of doing, you would think that they had nothing to say. Whatever you asked them, they gave you a marimakom, a source that seemed to answer your question. It would seem from the conversation as though they had nothing to say because they were subservient. They did not look to have their own opinion. They looked to be transmitters. They looked to be conduits, to bring the Torah from the generation before to the generation that follows, not to put static on the line so that we would know them. And it's reached proportions that are remarkable. But you should know, the Chazal were worried about people who have opinion. In fact, the term Am Ha'aretz is largely used to refer to somebody who has opinion. And as hard as it was for the Amei Ha'aretz tolerate, but there was actually boundaries that were put up to prevent the mixing, because it's only too easy. If you're engaged in a conversation with people who have opinions, it's only too easy to be drawn into having an opinion. And that's something that Chazal did not want us to do. And so we have to reaffirm our connection as tightly as we can to Eini Yodea, to Lemad Lashon Cholomar Eini Yodea, and in the process, to be able to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for Siyata Dishmaya, that we should be able to recreate an environment of allegiance to the Torah. We're not talking tonight about Bina. There's a wonderful and amazing thing that's been given an additional measure to women. Bina, which is a feeling. It is not an opinion. It's a feeling. You're welcome to have a feeling. And if you're granted a feeling, feeling doesn't determine an outcome. It's a feeling. And it must be regarded as such. Take it seriously. Somebody has a feeling. Just like we always have to take feelings seriously. But the idea of going from a feeling to an opinion is something that we have to do whatever we can to hold back in our own small way. I'm sure that feels to me as though I'm working against the tidal wave of opinions that was set in motion the first time that something became true because we feel that it's true. And that's what made it true. It didn't have a raya, don't have a chazal. It's not grounded in Mekoros. It's an opinion. And it may be a very important opinion, but it should have remained as a feeling. And it could not, it was meant never to have crossed over the line of becoming an opinion. And in the process of giving it an opinion, it set off a ripple effect, a domino effect, where opinions are now considered absolutely sacred, no matter who, no matter what. In fact, people are embarrassed to not have an opinion about things that others express opinions about.